For staying with us on TVC Breakfast. If you're just joining us, we are now in the second leg of the program. President Bola Tinubu has said his administration will do all it can to rebuild the communities affected by the floods in Borno State, and that he would also bring succor to the victims. The president was speaking when he paid a sympathy visit to the government and people of Borno. Senior reporter Jessica Fida was there.
President Bola Tinubu was accompanied by the Senate President Godswill Akpabio, members of the National Assembly, and chairman of the Nigerian Governors Forum, Abdulrahman Abdulrazak. President Tinubu is in the state to commiserate with the government and people over the floods that affected over 1 million people.
Thank you.
He disclosed that government under his administration will do its best towards bringing succor to victims of the flood disaster. This visit, according to Mr. President, is to share in the moment of grief and pain with the victims of the flood.
I'm just here to sympathize with you. I know your palace was overtaken by flood. I've had the report. This one disaster that we must pay attention to. We will help Borno State.
President Tinubu promised to assist the state government in no small measure to bring Borno back to its feet. Jessica Fida, TVC News, Maiduguri.
All right. Let's talk about this issue now. We intend and hope we can join via Zoom the Executive Director of Environmental Defenders Network, Chima Williams, with us during the course of the interview, hopefully. But we have with us an environmentalist here in the studio, Johnny Kuku. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
And
Good
welcome.
morning. It's a pleasure.
Right. This is indeed an unpalatable discussion that we are having. We've been keeping tabs on the situation in Borno State, in Maiduguri specifically. What are your thoughts as the government continues to get visitors from within and outside the country, promising and bringing in succor at this time? But what do you really make of what we are seeing in Borno?
Kemi, thank you so much. Let me say first, whatever affects a fellow man negatively, you want to reach out, commiserate, sympathize, and try to feel with them. But when you finish that, you want to go to brass task. Why did it happen? And what am I trying to say? It's quite sad that apart from the flooding itself, you heard of the collapse of the dam, the Aula Dam, right? That is why the disaster got to that level. And the dam suddenly collapsed without notice? No. For at least 2 years, there have been dire warnings that this dam is caving in. The water has been overflowing gradually until it collapsed. And millions of people are displaced. Right? About 40 dead, maybe more. Apart from economic losses. If it's just that, the dam was failing gradually and the people lacked resources to rectify it, we'll still feel for them. Or massive amounts are being voted continuously, being claimed by companies, even taxes to government being paid. Meanwhile, the job was abandoned. You see, it brings to mind what exactly is our preference both as a government and as a nation? Is it that our personal interest is so much stronger than the national interest? Is it that we don't have a policy? If we have, is it that we don't have monitoring? If we have, is it that we don't have enforcement? Or are we saying, when the common patrimony is shared out among, I don't want to use the word looters, there's no recovery process? Is there no accountability? Will somebody not be held responsible for what has happened?
So, you know, so many persons are actually raising concerns about how this distribution of relief items have really gone. And
I've not gone to distribution.
We're still going to talk about that. I heard that Chima Williams has joined us. Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
So let's start with your own thought on the government's approach to this flooding situation in Maiduguri.
Well, you see, we've always said it. Most of the times, our governments ways to react. They act reactively when an incident has already occurred. Like my brother that spoke, mentioned, it wasn't, the dam did not collapse overnight. There have been series of warnings. People knew that courage to revamp the dam, beef it up, and strengthen it, if it had been done, the colossal losses that we have now wouldn't have happened. About 30 lives lost, over 1 million people affected. Of course, over 500,000 hectares of land, almost impacted across the divide. Now, must we continue to be reactive? Must we continue to take care when the incident has already finished occurring? NIMET have been consistently warning on the flood situations. Even though this one will say, yes, it's not a normal flood because it was caused by an accident that was already known about, accident that could have been stopped, accident that, carelessness of our leaders, both at state, local government, and federal level, had created this problem. Because if we were careful, we will observe the things that protect lives and livelihoods of citizens, which is the primary duty of governments. So that was not done. So for me, yes, it is good for Mr. President to visit Borno State to commiserate with the victims and make promises. But I didn't hear where it was expressly mentioned that we will take proactive steps to ensure that this does not happen again by checking the life integrity of facilities that are in our country, which would have, if the integrity checks was regularly conducted, the adequate authorities would have known that the allowed dam was almost gone. So it is one thing to promise palliatives. And of course, you know what palliatives in this country means. When it is being distributed, at times it doesn't get to the real victims, those that need it. Okay, we have seen that severally happen. The COVID-19 palliatives that governors stored in warehouses in their states without distributing it to the people. The example of this abounds everywhere. And where it is distributed, mostly it goes into the hands of people that don't need it, whereas the people that need it continue to suffer. And I think, for me, the continuous treatment of flooding situation, the way the government of Nigeria, successive governments, it's not just this government, successive governments, is because it provides money for the boys. Okay? So when the incident happens like this, you will hear of millions and billions of naira being released. But the people that are supposed to benefit from it, you will see them complaining. Just as a report had put it that people in the IDP camps are complaining that they do not receive the provisions that have been made. So it is something that we have to rethink and rejig the system so that we begin to act proactively, stop it before it happens. It is cheaper to stop it before it happens than to take care after the event has completed.
All right. Let's put you on hold, Mr. Chima, and come back to the studio. You both have brought up a plethora of the concerns. Let's see how we can make the most of the remaining time we have. To be honest, I don't even know which to come first, but let me just do my best, Mr. Ikoku. So there is a disaster relief fund that the government has said will kick off for the victims. In fact, people are even afraid that there are still many more still buried under the water. But in order not to have another disaster on our hands, with this thousands of people displaced, what do you make of this? In addition to the issue of management or otherwise of funds, so much has been coming in. People are helping. And we hope that there will still be much more aid for the benefit of the victims. But what are your thoughts in making the most, or making the most of this disaster, of this crisis?
Kemi, normally I don't call your names, Bola Ahmed. But the situation is such that let's put a human perspective to it. Like Chima said, it's not as if it was all same. People knew. As at April, flood alert, failure of the dam has been raised. And just about a week before it collapsed, people were told to vacate. Are you with me? Now, our colleagues said monies were voted for the repairs of the dam. The filling portion, these monies were collected. No job was done. Number 3, and the saddest thing, ecological funds in billions are being collected by states till today.
And now there is a disaster relief fund
it's a sign of a greater failure. Ecological fund is supposed to preempt. It started in 2010 after the massive flood that almost sacked the whole of Oyo State, if you recall. Jonathan came up with ecological fund. When in 2022, a similar flooding like this occurred, Buhari had to call all the governors. What are you doing with this ecological fund? All I can say is there's lack of will. Jonathan also tried, but somewhere along the line, it looks like there is a lack of congruence of objectives, of priorities. And from what I can see, either there's no clear-cut policy or there's no clear-cut, what do you call it now? Either consequence for failing to abide by policy. Because when there's a policy, automatically there should be means for monitoring. And what? Because you keep releasing these funds. And there are massive, colossal accusations. Why did Joshua Dare go to jail? 700 million aside. You know when he was governor? Ecological funds were diverted.
I know you are pained by this issue, and I hope we can talk some more about it. But looking at the present challenge in Borno State, we don't even need to restate the obvious. Coming out of insurgency, and now yet another calamity of this nature.
I did my youth service there in 1983
in Borno State.
Yes,
indeed. So, in terms of how much help they're getting, and even how the days ahead will be for them, what are your thoughts before we go to Chima Williams?
Thank you very much. Now, the floods will come. Increased by the effect of climate change. I will not want to dwell on that. But the issue is that the floods can be managed. Right? Usually there are flash floods. And these flash floods also point to lack of governance. Because usually there are town planning regulations which are not being obeyed. So the first thing is, let's go back to our town planning regulations, either for setback, either for bulwarks, either for clearing of drainages, either for planting of trees and all that. And Borno is a place I know very well. It's my second home. They plant a lot of trees, not as if they are not planting. So this just shows that there are congested areas. And look at Konduga, it's about 70 kilos from Maiduguri, right? The whole of those areas now, there's slum dwelling, a lot of concrete work. So when the water bursts out, there are no paths for the water to take. That is the issue. So we just must go to planning and regulation so that there can be reasonable anticipation of what to do when the water breaks out. That's number one. Number two is that there are, of course, the Lake Chad supplies the water to the dam, right? To the River Angara. Let these dams and all the other facilities built be properly maintained. Chima has just told you about 500 hectares of land. Farmers have not even been farming for quite some time because of the Boko Haram issue. If they were farming, those crops would, to an extent also, right, do what? Keep the soil firm. So there's a lot that must be done on a consistent basis rather than this disaster fund. The people are not made to take control. I don't know to what extent we have, indigenous involvement.
Right.
And it's a key aspect of any environmental activity. Once the people there are not made part of it, forget it. You can hardly succeed.
All right, let's quickly go to Chima. Chima, I also like you to, react to what he has said. So many persons will say part of the government being proactive is holding someone to account. That's part of what the Sheriff of Borno was saying this morning, that this incident should be probed for everyone to be able to move on. But in terms of the funds that the government is getting at this time and the ecological funds that he also mentioned, which we know that Borno State actually received about 816.34 million. How well should this be utilized ahead of situations like this?
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you, my brother, I agree with him in all the suggestions that he's made and all the observations. The issue here is, as we always say it, because it is money for the boys, that is why there is no probe. Because if somebody had suffered, been punished for mismanagement of resources that are supposed to be used to save lives and livelihoods, of course, people will begin to take proactive steps to ensure that it doesn't happen to them. Yeah, like the case of Daruye that my brother mentioned. Yes, and don't forget that he suffered only after he had ceased being the governor because of immunity. But after that, how many other persons? He's not the one that stole more than any other person. All of them were almost as guilty as charged because the ecological funds, we don't see where they deploy them to. We don't see how they use it. Okay? So that on pages of paper, we'll hear about humongous amounts mentioned that have been shared for the ecological, from the ecological funds. And these problems exist with us. It used to be that because of non-desilting of drainages, we have flooding in some parts. But now it's gone beyond that. Drainages are not desilted as at when it's supposed to be done. And where it is done, we see that they desilt and pour out the sand that they removed just close to the drainage. And if rain falls immediately, it sinks back. It washes it back into where they were removed from. So you find out that until we begin to think proactively, until we begin to act proactively, intentionally. There should be intentionality in our actions. Not, when things have finished happening, people are dead. What amount of compassion will resurrect the 30 souls that are lost? And of course, it might just be what was observed. It might be much, much more than that. What type of compensation will you pay to the people that have been displaced? Over 1 million people displaced, taken to IDP camps. And of course, the conditions in the IDP camps is another issue of discussion, because the state of the IDPs is a recipe for, health issue challenges. Okay, so if you aggregate it all, our governments are not doing enough. It goes beyond paying visits, goes beyond paying condolences. It goes beyond, promises of palliatives. The critical thing is this: can't we stop it before it happens?
All right.
With the resources we have, we can.
All right.
We can, because not in all the flood situations that we've witnessed in this country, there is none that came accidentally. But because of lack of intentionality in taking care of what should be an aftermath of it, we found ourselves drowning inside the floods when they happen.
Right.
And then we begin to make promises on heaven and earth, which promises most of the time do not fall down.
Mr. Chima Williams, we have just about a minute left, and let me allow Mr. Ekoko here to, just quickly speak about the path to recovery. We hear the waters are receding, but we are still seeing an alarming level of water, still covering precariously, still high. So are you seeing the path to recovery?
The comfort is that most of it are flash flood. Okay. Within a short time, they will recede. But like he said, and like I said earlier, let us take proactive steps. Okay. These things, they are natural, they are foreseeable. Warnings will be given well ahead. Lumping people together in IDP camps is compounding the problem. Let's try to avoid that. Also, he has agreed with me, let there be accountability. So much money has been released. Even if you don't jail them, let them go and use the money to fix the infrastructure. Are you with me? Mm-hmm. And let's involve the local people. Environmental activity without indigenization is failure waiting to happen. You'll be shocked at the knowledge available at the local level. I can see already.
Right. I actually was hoping that perhaps maybe 30 seconds, if Chima Williams can speak. We hear that heavier rains are going to fall between now and October. So what happens now in Borno State, in Maiduguri, for example? It appears the dam is useless, having collapsed.
I think, knowing fully well that the rains are still coming heavier, it will be a good thing if a rechanneling of the waters can be done. Canalization, build canals that will take the water off the cities and the communities and empty possibly into the Chad or any other river that is close by, so that the water will definitely find its way out. Right. It's because the water cannot see anywhere to go, a channel through which to pass, that it gets to wherever, it finds space. So if the creative canalization from the source of this water to remove it to flow into another port, that would be good. And of course, I always advise that, look, this flood water that is causing great problems for us can be gathered, channeled into useful mechanisms to be
right.
used
That
for
would
the
be a
benefit
fine
of
place
mankind.
to rest our conversation. Gentlemen, we say a big thank you. First to Johnny Coco here with us in the studio and with us, though virtually. Chima Williams, many thanks for your time with us.
Thank you.
I'm grateful.
Thank you.